Okay.
All right, well that makes perfect sense.
All right.
So could you help me a little bit, Randy, understand how to identify a gifted and talented student?
Yeah. You know, again, we have some little sheets that will help us. One is just kind of the overall areas of gifted and talented identification.
Okay.
And again, these are kids that kind of project and display on a fairly consistent basis a high level of display of these behaviors.
Okay.
And it's not just an occasional thing. It's something that's above and beyond being a well-behaved student that accomplishes their tasks
Right.
in a timely manner. We have a lot of bright kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily gifted,
Right.
but we sometimes approach them the same way in the way we provide instruction.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm hoping we would do today, you have your class list with you, and you have your
Yep.
MAP scores.
I sure do.
And we've got these different areas here, general intellectual, academic, specifically around math,
Okay.
creative thinking, leadership, and the visual and performing arts. I want you to just take a couple minutes to look at your class list,
Okay.
and on this piece of paper, in these different categories, just jot names down of kids that you would like to just talk a little more
Sure.
about.
Okay.
Because we're really looking at creating possibly some kids to nominate
Okay.
now, or some kids that you really think we should continue to watch
Uh-huh.
and maybe nominate at a different time as we get more information.
Okay.
Maybe you've had a kid that just moved in
Yeah.
and you're really thinking that, oh my gosh, this kid, he needs a little bit more than what I'm producing without some of the differentiation.
Uh-huh.
And then you may have other kids that are just a little quieter and it takes a while to get to know them. So.
Right. Okay. Sure. So
So-
let's take a look here. So I can see that I would maybe have some possible students that would fit the general intellectual category. I know their MAP scores are very high
Right,
for their grade level. So I would like to just note their names down here.
right.
I know Donnie makes some exceptional mental connections using logical or analytical thinking in unique ways. And it
Okay.
seems to do that very consistently. And with a MAP score like this, I maybe would like to discuss Donnie a little bit more.
Okay.
Let's see. Who else? You know, I have some students that seem to be able to get groups organized really well, and I just see that could maybe be leadership. I see that that student would need to take an active role in decision making, which I see that student do quite a bit. Can foresee consequences and implications of decisions, follows through, sought by peers as leaders for sure. They are always coming to Amy to see, what she's doing, and they're very interested in her. So she's definitely sought by her peers. Now I have a question about the leadership. What if that student has just an average MAP score, but they show some of those leadership signs? Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, the MAP scores, I think, really more are an indicator of the general intellectual or academic performance piece.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership piece could be some of that's the personality that kids bring and the drive that they bring.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's leadership in a way that we're scratching our heads around because it kind of is sometimes subversive. It may be getting kids to do other things that we don't
Right.
want them to be doing. They're just not leaders in the sense that we maybe want them to lead,
Uh-huh.
but they may have that peer influence.
Okay.
So the MAP scores aren't necessarily an indicator of leadership potential.
Okay, great.
They can be because you have
Uh-huh.
to be a pretty smart person to get people to listen to you
Yeah,
usually.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
and the leadership and the visual and performing arts, of course, that nomination requires a fairly significant investment in developing a portfolio.
Okay.
So that requires letters and samples, and so it really should be a pretty exceptional piece that's
Okay.
displayed consistently.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So we developed that list
Mm-hmm.
of the kids that you think you're ready to go and nominate, and
Uh-huh.
those other kids that we're going to keep a track of, and as an advocate, that's my job to keep that running list
Yeah.
and to just help facilitate with you the nomination process, and then also to visit with you later in the year about where those kids are and watch.
And with these nominations, I'd also like to take note about some ideas to think about when identifying a gifted and
Yes.
talented English language learner.
And that's a gift you bring to the table, so.
Yes. So I just wanted, to bring this to the teachers and the advocates in the buildings, that there is a form here where it does look at that language learner at a school level, as a language-based level, and a culturally based level. Remembering that our students really are taking on 2 languages at one time, and the cognitive ability that takes in order to do that in itself is so high that sometimes it's really important to pay specific attention to some of these things that are noted on this sheet. So as we do go through this process, I just want to bring this to advocates and teachers' attentions to take a look at this and see if this could help identify
That's
any
a
of
great
those
reference
students as
sheet.
well.
Because a number of our students, this will be important because a number of our students do not take the MAP testing.
That's true.
And especially in some of our dual language schools.
Right, yeah.
And as a result of that, we might not have that hard data.
Tangible,
We have more
yeah.
observational
Right.
and daily performance things.
Yes, so
Thanks for bringing that to the table.
Definitely.
Okay.
Great.
So, all right, so we've kind of gone through that process.
Yeah.
And I think the third piece we want to talk a little bit about today is a teacher coming to the table, having some specific questions about a way to differentiate / personalize learning. You want to speak a little to how a conversation like that might look?
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's important, again, I know that we are going to a continuum-based system here in the school district of Waukesha, which is fantastic for our differentiation and thinking about where our students are, and when we're assessing our students and thinking where they are on that continuum. And that can really help us guide our instruction for our students and where they're at. So thinking about that assessment and that formative assessment piece that should take place when we're differentiating for our students is very crucial. It's also really getting to know your students and creating that positive learning culture in your classroom. I don't know if you have anything to add to
Well,
those pieces.
kids that will take some risks.
Yeah.
And you talked about the assessment piece. Some of our schools are using the ASW process to really
Yep.
help identify where kids, what they bring to the table and what they know or what they don't know.
Right, wrapping around those students and
Yeah.
really getting to know them as a learner. Thinking about the strategies that support our learners and our standards. And another great tool that we use in our classrooms, and I see it all over the district, is those flexible learning groups that we use in literacy and math. That flexible grouping is really important when differentiating for our students. So I think also using your teachers and your colleagues to help work around and wrap around that student, getting to know them and knowing how you can best serve them and where they fall on that continuum.
Right. And then, of course, always at the end, having a conversation around, how did this work for the kid? What did you learn? And the other piece you touched on is, when we differentiate, although we might be differentiating particularly for some of our kids that are gifted and talented, historically I found there are other kids that will benefit from that kind of differentiation as well. So don't feel tied to, having this poor GT kid kind of out there on their own working alone, where there may be, if you got a 3-section school, there might be some flexible grouping that you can do around that.
Absolutely. I just feel like with strategies and scaffolding that you use for example, English learners, a lot of those supports and things can also be good for all learners and that students can benefit from that. Another way to differentiate for our students is that inquiry-based programming, which can give our students the opportunity to really explore things that they're interested in.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being our audience here, and hopefully if this is newer to you, or even if you've done it before, provided you a little additional information on how to facilitate those meetings. Again, Marisa or I, if you would like us to come out and be a part of any of those days, we do our best to find some time, or if you want to meet with us before to kind of go over some of these things, we'd welcome that. So
yeah. Thank you so much for your time and best of luck. Please reach out with any questions you might have to Randy or I.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. One more time. We can cut that at the end. All right. Oh, you have to hit close. No, hit it.